Hello, I am Mayor Betsy Nash, and welcome to the March 10th regular City Council meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with City Council, city staff, and members of the public participating virtually and in the City Council chambers. Please note, public comment speaker time may be limited if there are more than 10 speakers on an item. We also ask that if you are in person, please submit your speaker cards for all agenda items to the city clerk at this time. Tonight, we have in-person interpretation services available. Please visit the table in the back for a headset. For those in virtual attendance, please note that there is a globe icon near the hand feature on your screen. Our interpreters this evening are Amada Sosa, Christina Murphy, Ricardo Delgado, Angelita Thielen. Thank you all for your time and services today.
Buenas noches, soy la alcaldesa Betsy Nash. Bienvenidos a la reunión del Consejo Municipal del 10 de marzo. Esta es una reunión híbrida del Consejo en las cámaras del Ayuntamiento. El día de hoy, si hay más de 10 oradores, se va a limitar el tiempo de los puntos. Tenemos intérpretes en persona y si tiene cartas de orador, por favor entrégueselas al frente a la secretaria. Si necesitan auriculares, están disponibles al frente. Los intérpretes de esta noche serán Amada Sosa, Cristina Murphy, Ricardo Delgado, Ángela Thielen, y gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you. Roll call. I would like to introduce City Council members and staff present. In the City Council chambers are myself, Mayor Betsy Nash, and City Council members Drew Combs and Cecilia Taylor. Vice Mayor Jennifer Wise is absent, and City Council member Jeff Schmidt is participating remotely with provisions of the Brown Act. City Council member Schmidt, please let us know if there are any persons 18 years or older in the room, and if so, the general nature of your relationship with the individual.
Thanks, Mayor Nash. I'm by myself.
Thank you. In accordance with Government Code 54953 and the City Council Procedures Manual, when one or more City Council members participates remotely, agenda items requiring action will be voted on using roll call. This evening, the roll call vote will be taken with City Council member Taylor first, and then in alphabetical order. With City Council member Schmidt first, and then in alphabetical order using first name with the mayor voting last. Staff present include City Manager Justin Murphy, Assistant City Manager Stephen Stolte, City Attorney Nara Doherty, and City Clerk Judy Herron. City Clerk Herron, would you please provide instructions to the City Council and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. And again, echoing a welcome to our March 10th City Council meeting. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment, we ask that you complete a speaker card and return it to me at the clerk's desk if you are participating in chambers. If you're virtual, you can engage that hand feature when the mayor calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak. And if you are calling in, you'll press *9 at that time. That concludes my instructions. Would like to make the announcement that we are recruiting for all of our advisory bodies. And through April 3rd, visit menlopark.gov/commissions or contact the clerk's office for more information. Now that concludes my instructions. Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. Agenda review. Agenda review provides advance notice to members of the public and city staff of any modifications to the agenda. To ensure staff is available and prepared, will the City Council have any questions or comments on consent calendar or informational items? City Clerk Herron, how many speaker cards have you received for G1 Slow Streets Program, H1 Solid Waste Rates, and H2 Water Rates?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. We've received so far one speaker card for G1 Slow Streets.
Thank you. Does the City Council desire to modify the order of any agenda item? We now go to public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the city council on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the city council once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Speaker time will be limited if there are more than 10 speakers. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The city council cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore, the city council cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. City Clerk Karen, please call for general public comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, for any member of the public who wishes to provide comment for an item not on tonight's agenda, if you're in person, return those speaker cards. Virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. All right, this is the final call for public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. Seeing no hands or cards, Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Presentations and proclamations. We have one proclamation this evening, E1, recognizing Women's History Month. City Clerk Karen, please call for public comment on item E1.
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So any member of the public wishing to provide comment on our proclamation E1, Women's History Month. Again, if you're in person, return a speaker card. Virtual, engage the hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. Final call for public comment on our proclamation E1. No hands or cards. Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Women's History Month, first observed as Women's History Week in 1978 by the Sonoma County Commission on the Status of Women's Education Task Force, then by President Carter in 1980, before becoming a month-long event in 1987, is a time to recognize, honor, and celebrate the invaluable accomplishments of women in our country and around the world. The 2026 theme is Leading the Change, Women Shaping a Sustainable Future, and highlights women driving sustainably across environmental, economic, and social sectors, fostering long-term equity and resilience. We would like to invite Junior League President-elect Christy Bonham and Executive VP Chris Bish to accept the proclamation.
Did you want to share any words today?
Well, first off, thank you for having us and thank you for letting us accept this proclamation on your behalf or on our behalf. I do want to say, I think it's really important, especially with Women's History Month, that we acknowledge the fact that there are so many amazing women across our community that are doing things that never get a public recognition. And those are our mothers, those are our teachers, those are our businessmen, our businesswomen, and just leaders across all kinds of sectors. So we're really proud of the work that we do at the Junior League, but we're also really proud of the women that show up every single day, helping to make and inspire change that never get any sort of public recognition. So thank you for the honor for us, but also we want to celebrate all the women out there that need some sort of recognition. Thank you.
Consent calendar. Under the consent calendar, the City Council may take action to approve routine business items in one motion unless a City Council member, city staff member, or a member of the public requests that an item be discussed or continued to a later date. City Clerk Karen, do we have any public comments on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So for any member of the public who wishes to provide comment on our consent calendar items, F1, meeting minutes, F2, travel requests for city council members, or F3, an agreement amendment for aquatics system maintenance. If you are in person, return that speaker card. Virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. Final call for public comment on our consent calendar items, F1 through F3. Seeing none. Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. So is there a motion and a second on the table to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. City Clerk Karen, please state the motion and call for the vote.
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So we do have a motion on the floor by City Councilmember Taylor and a second by City Councilmember Combs to approve the consent calendar. Is there any further City Council question or discussion? Seeing none, City Councilmember Schmidt,
Aye.
City Councilmember Combs,
Yes.
City Councilmember Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Nash,
Yes.
and the motion passes with Vice Mayor Wise absent. Thank you.
Study session. Study sessions are an opportunity for city staff to introduce an item that will require policy direction from the City Council in the near future. City staff will provide a presentation. I will then call for public comment. After public comment, the City Council will discuss the matter interactively with staff. The City Council will not take action on items addressed in study sessions. The City Council may provide direction to staff for preparation of additional analysis or information necessary when the item returns to the City Council for action. The study session tonight is G1, provide direction on the Slow Streets program and implementation process. Here to introduce the item is Senior Transportation Planner Katrine Macier.
Good evening, council members. I'm Katrine Maki, Senior Transportation Planner with the Public Works Department. Tonight, I will present the Slow Streets program for your review, which is intended to replace the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program and establish a data-driven framework to identify and prioritize traffic calming projects on neighborhood streets. I will begin with a background on the prior program. Next, I'll provide an overview of the Slow Streets program and highlight key changes. Then we'll walk through how projects will be submitted, evaluated, and implemented, and finally conclude with a staff recommendation. The city established the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, or NTMP, in 2004. In 2020, the Transportation Master Plan included a recommendation to update the NTMP to streamline the resident request process. The program was paused in 2020 during the pandemic due to a reduced roadway activity and competing operational priorities. In April of 2022, staff began work to restart the program and presented initial process changes to the Complete Streets Commission. In September of 2023, staff presented a proposed framework to City Council. At that time, Council directed staff to return with a revised program that was aligned with the Vision Zero Action Plan, which was adopted in 2024 and now provides the policy foundation for the updated program. Council provided specific direction to improve the program by developing criteria, focusing on safety and speed reduction, and ensuring equitable access. One key limitation of the prior NTMP was the petition requirement, which created barriers to participation and did not provide equal access for all residents. Additionally, individual projects often took multiple years to complete. The Slow Streets program was developed to address these limitations and align with Vision Zero goals. The Slow Streets program is the successor to the NTMP and applies specifically to neighborhood streets. This includes local access streets, neighborhood connectors, and bicycle boulevards. These are all defined in the general plan. The program's objective is to encourage safe speeds and improve safety using a data-driven and equitable approach to prioritize projects. Key changes include removing the petition requirement, introducing a batched review cycle, and implementing a point-based scoring system that's based on safety indicators. The process begins with members of the public submitting requests through an online form on the city's website. Public outreach will help inform the public about this program. Staff will review each submission and follow up as needed to ensure that the request is clearly defined and eligible for evaluation. This ensures all requests are documented and evaluated consistently. Staff will verify that the requested street qualifies as a neighborhood street under the general plan. If a request involves a higher classification roadway, it will be routed through other city processes, such as the Transportation Master Plan, Vision Zero, and already planned CIP projects. Other requests might be a better fit for our maintenance team to address. This ensures each request is addressed through the appropriate pathway. Eligible street segments will be evaluated using a point-based scoring system. This system allows staff to compare concerns and prioritize locations based on measurable safety indicators. Points are assigned based on observed speeds, injury collisions, traffic volumes, and proximity to schools, parks, community destinations, and underserved communities. Speed and traffic volume data will be obtained using Streetlight, a transportation data platform that estimates vehicle speeds and traffic volumes using anonymized location data from mobile devices and in-vehicle navigation systems. Unlike traditional 24 to 72-hour traffic counts, Streetlight provides year-round averages across all streets. This allows staff to expedite the evaluation of requests consistently and compare the relative safety conditions citywide. The point-based framework provides a method to evaluate and rank projects. This approach directs resources to locations with the greatest potential safety benefit by focusing on measurable conditions associated with elevated safety risks. Beginning with speed. Frequent speeding is a primary contributor to crash risk and injury severity on neighborhood streets. The program uses the 85th percentile speed and assigns 1 point per mile per hour, that is the measured speed in excess of 25 miles per hour, speed limit on neighborhood streets. Documented injury collisions provide direct evidence of existing safety issues. The program assigns 2 points per injury collision recorded in the past 3 years. This data comes from the SafeTrek Transportation Injury Mapping System to ensure that locations with the demonstrated safety concerns receive higher priority. Higher traffic volumes increase exposure and the likelihood of conflicts between roadway users, particularly when combined with higher speeds. The program assigns 1 point for every 500 vehicles above the 750 weekday annual average daily traffic trips. And this is based on 1 year of historical data and consistent with the city's transportation impact analysis guidelines. Neighborhood streets that are near schools, parks, and public facilities serve higher concentrations of pedestrians and bicyclists, as trips originating throughout neighborhoods tend to converge at these destinations. The program assigns 1 point if the street segment is adjacent to schools, parks, pedestrian and bicycle bridges, or public facilities, as identified in the general plan and Safe Routes to School maps. The program assigns 1 point if the street segment is located within an underserved community, as defined in the city's environmental justice element. This slide illustrates how different street segments may score based on observed conditions. First, the list of streets to score will be drawn from the list of eligible resident requests. Then the scoring reflects the additive nature of each safety factor. So a location with higher speeds and high volumes, for example, Street A, will score higher than a location with only high volume, which would be Street C. This scoring allows staff to prioritize locations where traffic calming measures are most needed. Projects located on emergency routes will require coordination with the Menlo Park Fire Protection District to ensure that traffic calming measures do not affect emergency operations. Projects without documented speeding or injury collisions will not be prioritized. Once the projects are prioritized, the selected projects will advance to the conceptual design phase. Staff will develop the preliminary concepts and present them to the Complete Streets Commission for feedback and community input. Traffic calming measures implemented through this program will be selected from the Vision Zero toolbox. Traffic calming measures that may be installed as part of the program are speed humps, stop signs, advanced stop bars, marked crosswalks, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and neighborhood traffic circles. Projects may be delivered through several pathways depending on their complexity and available resources. Smaller projects may be implemented quickly using dedicated program funding, while other projects may be coordinated with the street resurfacing projects or incorporated into the capital improvement program. Larger projects may be implemented through future capital planning cycles. The current municipal code requires City Council by ordinance or resolution approval for the installation of traffic control devices. Speed humps are not traffic control devices, but all of the other traffic calming measures mentioned tonight are defined as traffic control devices by the California Vehicle Code. So to improve administrative efficiency, staff is recommending that City Council consider approving an implementation process that would allow the city manager or designee to install traffic control devices without returning to the City Council for approval. As an example of how implementing a project may go, we would look for opportunities to include a top-ranked segment in our already programmed resurfacing projects. We would then recommend a traffic calming design be added to that street design, and hypothetically, it could be comprised of 2 speed bumps, and that would cost a total of about $30,000. On January 14th, the Complete Streets Commission reviewed the draft program and unanimously recommended that the City Council adopt the program with the following 2 modifications. They recommended that we change the scoring on the vehicle speeds over the speed limit from a linear to non-linear scoring. So for example, that would be if the speeds above the speed limit were very high, it would receive more than 1 point per mile per hour. The request was not incorporated. Staff reviewed the 85th percentile speeds on the city's neighborhood streets, and the data indicated that the streets operate within a speed range where the injury risk increases incrementally. So this supports the use of the linear scoring method outlined already in the program. The second modification was to include a scoring factor to reflect bicycle and pedestrian usage on neighborhood streets. This was incorporated into the program by adding the bicycle and pedestrian bridges. Staff is seeking City Council direction on the program and the proposed implementation process to support administrative efficiency. Staff would return in April and recommend City Council's adoption of the program as a consent item. This concludes my presentation. Thank you, and we're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Let's go to public comment at this time. City Clerk Heron, do we have public comment?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So for any member of the public who wishes to provide a comment on our study session item G1, direction on the Slow Streets program, if you are in person, return that speaker card. Virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. Currently have 2 cards. So this will be the final call for public comment on our study session item G1. Did have 1 additional hand raise. So we have 3 speakers. Our first speaker will be Bill Kirsch, followed by Laura Milan.
Council members, thank you for your service. Very much appreciated. I'm a little disappointed with this new plan, the new NTMP. It feels like kind of a continuation of an overly bureaucratic process that's going to take years and years and years to give relief to any of the neighborhood streets. My street, Partridge, which connects University to El Camino, has a cut-through problem. We're the main cut-through street. We had an accident a year or two ago, a crash. I read through the new plan, and it talks about a data-driven approach. But what I think it should say is an urgency-driven approach, a low-cost, quick build approach, a compassion approach. And I think what's needed is, aside from more data, I feel like we don't need more data. I feel like what we need is the city staff to come out to these streets, to talk to the neighbors. They can see the problem for themselves. We all know that we have a lot of dangerous streets in our city. And I think you should look at the volume of complaints, the streets that have submitted, not proposals, but have submitted letters to get something done. And I think if the city staff will come out, for example, to walk our parallel streets to Middle Avenue, they'll see right away what the problem is. And I think the strategy should be get something done right away. Put down rubber speed humps, for example. They're low cost, they can be put in quickly, and if they don't work, if there's too many complaints, they can be taken out, instead of spending all this time and energy on process and getting something done in the far future. I just think that's the wrong approach. It should be a much more urgent approach to make our neighborhoods safer. To me, that's the most important thing a city can do, is to make their residential streets safer for the community. Anyway, thank you very much.
Next speaker will be Laura Milan, followed by Katie Peruzzi.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Laura Milan from the Finance and Audit Commission, speaking on my own behalf. At last week's Oak Knoll Career Fair, kid after kid told me they need more places to hang out. Research ties children's outdoor play to how safe their streets feel and shows that play is one of the strongest predictors of childhood mental health. Safe streets are public health infrastructure for everyone, especially kids and elderly people who are most vulnerable to collisions. Tonight's draft isn't a slow streets program so much as a traffic calming triage framework. A slow streets program starts from a vision of what neighborhoods should feel like and works towards that. This starts from injury data after the injuries occur and works forward to a speed bump. Those are different projects, and Menlo Park should pursue both. This framework hinges on the 85th percentile speed, and I think this is the nut to crack that explains why everyone is feeling unheard. 85th percentile speed reports on what the safe majority is doing and literally does not count the fastest 15% of drivers. So if 85 cars drive down a street at 20 miles an hour, going to Trader Joe's, going to school, driving in their own neighborhood, and 15 drivers drive 40 miles per hour down that street, cutting through or just driving fast, the 85th percentile metric does not report on the fast drivers. So we come and we say, hey, the cars are going fast on our street. And the data says, no, they're not. Your 85th percentile speed is here. And that's because everyone who lives in the neighborhood drives respectfully in the neighborhood, and the cut-through drivers fly through, and our metrics don't report that because that is what 85th percentile speed is. It stacks the numbers, goes to number 85, and reports on everything below that. Above that, we don't know the top speeders. So I think that is the nut to crack here. That explains why the community and the city staff are all seeing different things on the same streets. And so given that, and that we know this data, I think that the resident request process we're seeing here is going to lead to a dead end for 80% of Menlo Park streets. So 80% of people are going to say, hey, I need help. And we're going to tell them, no, you don't, because your speed is not over 25 and you don't have an injury collision. I think it's 16.5% of streets qualify on speed. And so I think that what we should do is we should take this data, which we already have, and start treating those streets. We don't need residents to ask us to treat the streets we know are dangerous. And then we should also develop a slow streets program. We know that resident requests are the most accurate early warning system the city has. Partridge Avenue, where Bill was just speaking from, requested traffic calming in March 2022, and then a cyclist was hit right there in October 2024. Elder Avenue requested help in January 2024, and then a cyclist was injured there 6 months later. And then a second cyclist was injured there in May 2025. Residents are flagging the danger, and then people are getting hurt right where the community is saying they're going to get hurt. And I believe we should listen to that signal before the injuries happen. So my ask tonight is to recommend adopting this framework as a traffic safety triage program, because we need that. But don't call it our slow streets program, because we still need to build that using better metrics and a vision for what we want our neighborhoods to feel like. Thank you.
Okay, and our next speakers will be Katie Peruzzi, followed by Janet Poses.
Hi, City Council, Katie Bruzzi here. When I was serving on the Complete Streets Commission, which I'm no longer doing, we spent some time looking at the NTMP, and I will say that I think what staff have come back with here is a great improvement over what we used to have, which put enormous burdens of proof and organizing on neighborhoods and just took tons of time. I love that they're trying to use a data-centered approach, and that they've segmented things into quick build projects and things that are more complicated. I do kind of agree with the previous speakers that this doesn't necessarily achieve the citywide goal of slow streets in neighborhoods. And I find myself wondering when I read the staff report and look at the program about the numbers. I wonder how many people are currently waiting in the queue, hoping that they can get some kind of traffic calming in their neighborhood. I'm wondering how many quick build sorts of projects staff think they might be able to reasonably accomplish, and how many people that leaves hanging. And I wonder if other cities have figured out ways to streamline this even a little more. I know that our staffing concerns are a huge bottleneck right now, and that's not staff's fault. I'm sure if they could duplicate themselves, they would. I also really support anything that means they don't have to bring every single change to council. That seems like a good idea. But I would love to see the Complete Streets Commission maybe working with our staff to do some creative problem solving about how other cities are maybe streamlining this even a little further. So is there a set of things that the city could approve that neighborhoods could organize and implement themselves that are considered to be, low risk enough, standard enough, that they don't require a massive concentration of staff time and resources, for example. So anyway, I think we're heading in the right direction, and I really do feel for the staff because I know they're incredibly overburdened right now. But I hope that we can continue to move in the direction of making slow streets possible around our city. I don't really see the downside in getting as many neighborhood streets to have slower speeds. I just think it makes it a more inviting place for families and for older folks and people who are mobility impaired, and animals and all of our great residents. Thanks.
Great. Our next speaker will be Janet Poses.
Hi, hopefully the audio is working okay. So I'm also an Allied Arts resident, like Laura, and our first speaker. I'm on College Avenue, lived here about 16 years. And, this is the last X months at the first time that I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, is it a safe time to walk the dog? can I actually go out without fearing for my life? And, cars are turning on to college. It's like, okay, we get off. They're tired of being in traffic on Middle, apparently, coming across University, kind of annoyed and fast, and then making that first left turn. And sometimes I actually will try to hang out on the corner and try to prevent them from doing it because there are no sidewalks. So everyone that's walking dogs in the middle, when they see people right around there, sometimes they go to the next street, which again is probably not ideal because now I'm sending them to Partridge. But it's just scary. And that is a street that a lot of people are coming off the bike bridge from Stanford. They're commuting to go downtown, so they'll go along Arbor, they'll go down College, then they'll kind of route Blake to go downtown. So a lot of bike traffic is coming through there. The other day, a cut-through person like sped by me at about 60 miles an hour, not 60, sorry, 40, and then like almost slammed their brakes because there were kids playing basketball in the street. It was like a Sunday afternoon at 2. It's like, so it's just gotten bad, and I don't know why people are being so aggressive, but just simple things like putting signage like you're entering a residential neighborhood, slow streets, just that people get the idea that, okay, this is not like a big thoroughfare. And I think just those subtle messages could go a long way in a lot of neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, seeing no further hands or cards. Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. I would now like to open up for city council discussion. Who would like to start? Councilmember Schmidt, would you like to start?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Nash. I'm happy to start. I actually have, if it's okay, I have 7 different things, but I'm going to chunk them so I'm not monopolizing if that's okay. I'll go quick because most of my first few things are just some clarifying questions. So wanted to thank staff for all the work on this. I can sense it's come a long way and there may be still a few hills to climb, but I wanted to start by saying thank you for accelerating and working on this. Question number 1 is I don't know that I pulled this out of either the presentation or the staff report, but I'm curious, how will legacy projects and the backlog be treated? We have several years worth of that. I think Laura and others referenced those. It was just a little unclear. Is this a reset or will we continue to work on the legacy projects that have already been in the queue? That's sort of my first question.
So it will not be a reset. The queue is approximately 30 requests, and that would be analyzed as part of the first batch.
So that is almost a re-look at those.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Second quick question, and this is maybe me reading into the staff report, but I wasn't quite sure. On page, let me just look here. On page 4 of the staff report, in the next to last paragraph, there's a reference to the Complete Streets Commission asking for bike and pedestrian usage as part of the evaluation criteria. And then, but that sort of seems to contrast with what I read in the staff's recommendation around bike and pedestrian bridges. So those seem like 2 different things to me. And I'm interpreting both of those. So I guess there's some language in there that says that'll be addressed first. But does that imply that there will be scoring eventually for all bike and ped usage on these streets? Or is it really centered on the bridges? Does that make sense? Because I just, it felt like bridges feels different than bike and ped usage on all streets. That's what I'm trying to question.
Yes, good question. We were looking at areas of concentration. So on a typical local street, that's where you would begin, end your trip. Maybe you're leaving from your house. And so in order to add points for areas of concentration, we were looking for areas where we would see more than your baseline level of pedestrian or bicycle activity, which we would expect distributed relatively evenly across our local streets. So the bicycle and pedestrian bridges are a way to look at where those trips would accumulate, for lack of a better word, along with our community, our parks, our schools, and those other community destinations that are already being counted.
But is that, and my question's more, is that a starting point for eventually looking at all bike and ped, or is that going to be the concentration is the criteria from now until whenever?
That is the criteria staff landed on as a way to address where we would see higher concentrations of that bicycle and pedestrian use.
Got it. Okay, and two more quick ones. I was a little surprised at the $15,000 per speed hump. Could you, that seems like a lot. This is not my area of expertise. Is there any way you could break that down a little bit to sort of explain why that costs so much for something that seems quite simple?
I would think of it as an all-inclusive project cost and not specifically just the asphalt in the speed hump. We've received bids that had a varying range, but that is the average cost for other projects.
Okay, so it's if we did more of them together, then would that average out sorry, that was an what I'm trying to get at is if we just did one street and we did, 2 speed humps on the street, that seems like an expensive way to do it. Would we do a series of streets in a row to kind of level out that cost? Is that the batching idea?
Yes, and the 15,000 is a high end of the estimate of what it could cost. So there could be ways to have a project be more efficient, and that cost might come down.
Okay, cool. I'm going to stop there. I have a few more, but maybe the mayor, maybe you could rotate back to me after everybody's had a chance to speak. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Nash, and thank you, staff, for the presentation. I have a few questions. Just according to the map on page G1.18, I'm just looking at the map, and I just wanted to find out how are you including child development centers and small schools?
If the Child Development Center is part of something like Bellhaven, it would be counted. If it's a standalone school and it's not on this map, it's not currently being added into the data.
So are you referring to the city's Child Development Center?
Mm-hmm. That would be an example where it is included.
Okay, where it is included.
And then I believe there's some preschools as part of our parks. So those would be included because they're on the map as that park.
I think there's at least 2 other that might need to be added, even though it's a part of the Bellhaven Elementary School campus. And the other is Beechwood School.
Okay.
Let's see, I have a few other questions. With the Safe Routes program, just curious as to if the city's using the same data source as the county, as far as pedestrian counts, bicycle counts, or even vehicle volume, speeds, if any of the same, if the city's data is coming from that source that the county uses.
I'm not familiar with the data source that the county uses.
Hi, good evening, council members. Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director. The database that we're using for collisions is state wide, and so comes from Berkeley. As it relates to vehicle volume and vehicle speed, we're using Streetlight, which is a program that we've used for quite a few years, and we recently purchased again to facilitate just the review of speeds and vehicle volume. So that is a program that we have that we'll be using to then collect the information on volume and vehicle speed. So it's not a county database. It's open, big data. And so we're using that to analyze our segments to see the volume of the vehicles going through these street segments and also their speed.
Okay, thank you. And so how does the city count pedestrian or bicyclists?
Broadly at an intersection, pedestrians and bicyclists are counted through the traditional counts, through the video counts they would be captured. The streetlight data is most effective for counting vehicular data.
Thank you. I have a few more questions, but you sure? I have to find them. Sure.
Councilmember Combs.
Thanks. And so following up actually on one of Councilmember Taylor's point, so how actually is the data collected? Like, are monitors randomly put out on city streets, or are they put out in connection with specific proposals or future projects or reviews that are coming up? Then the monitors are put out to collect the traffic data. Are they collected by satellites? Please let me know.
So it's a subscription-based software access that provides the data, and the data is collected through anonymized cell phone, and in a vehicle, there's a vehicle that will transmit its location data. So they're collecting this through, and also there's in-road sensors as well throughout cities across the nation, and they compile all of that data. And that is where we can run the query based on that database. So that query that staff will run is where we'll come up with the scoring and for volumes and speeds.
And you can run that for any street in the city.
Correct.
And have the underlying data be at least at the same volume or amount, or is there a specific threshold? If I'm thinking like a street, there's a really small street not too far from here that I used to live on called Cherry. I don't know if it's 20 yards long, maybe a little longer than that, versus El Camino. And so can you pull a query on Cherry? And even if you could, do you feel that would really provide valid information about Cherry? Versus again, like El Camino, we know El Camino because there's lots of volume there.
We looked at the data that we were able to query, and we can select local streets, and we compared the results that gave us with counts that had been already done in the city, and they looked within a reasonable range. It's still apples and oranges when you're comparing the two, because one is an annual average of every day in that year, and the other one is the 24 or 72 hours that we had the tubes in the street. So they aren't exactly the same, but we did do a spot check and it looked reasonable. However, the bicycle and pedestrian data, that's where we wouldn't use that. Yeah.
And for the data based on the tubes in the street, you have that for every every street in the city.
We have not placed tubes on every street in the city.
So there is a gap as far as
truthing it, so to speak.
The data, right? So you don't, there is a place, again, because you were saying like, we have this data, it's for every street, and we validate it against this other data set. But that other data set does not cover every street.
Right. We did not validate every single street.
Okay. Or you don't have the ability to, like, I know
Right.
you didn't do it, but you don't have the ability to do it.
Correct.
Because that data set has gaps. What is the percentage of streets in the city do we have the tube data for?
I can say that we cannot answer that. And we also have to look back at when these data counts were taken.
Yeah.
So we do have, in terms of timing, we do have gaps. If we were to do an inventory of the past data sets that we've collected, some of them would be dated. So the use of streetlight does allow us to look at existing conditions. It is a platform that is being used by many agencies in San Mateo County. And as part of this effort to streamline the process, we feel is a very effective tool to be able to assess whether there is a speed and volume issue. Now, if there's something that doesn't quite seem correct, we have talked about confirming and then looking at then doing data, installing the tubes and actually taking data counts. But it is it is a platform that is being used widely.
Every other year, the city does collect traffic volume data with tubes on the roads, but we don't select our neighborhood streets as the streets where we collect that data from. It's typically those El Camino and our larger streets.
Okay, so for the streets that would be in theory and scope for this program, we actually don't have any tube data at all, likely. And
We
certainly-
would have collected it as part of, in the past when the NTM program was going, we would collect counts for those specific streets when the request came in. And that was part of the reason that there was such a long time required to do the analysis on the streets.
Okay, appreciate that. And just to be clear, because again, like at the heart of this, it's a framework that is going to be used to tell residents no. Like, no, what you're proposing is not a priority. No, I know you think that the traffic speeding on your street is a problem, but it is fine. You can have your 5-year-old playing out there. You can go walk your dog. It's all fine. And so if we're using a framework to tell people no, we have to be very specific and precise about the validity of that framework. And so that's why I think it's important to really dig into, like, and especially because at the end of the day, what we're trying to say is like, what is really a policy or maybe a political decision, we're going to make a data-driven decision. And I'll get to my comments later. Rarely do I think that transition is as clean and scientific as we would like to convince ourselves that it is. But I'll get there later. When was the last project that we would actually consider like a slow streets or NTMP project? When was that completed, and what was that project?
Good evening, council members. I'm Joanna Chan, Transportation Manager. The most recent NTMP project was a few years back, about 4 or 5 years back, and I believe they were on Lemon, McKendree, and Blackburn, and they were mostly speed humps.
Speed humps, okay. Okay, so that's what we consider the last slow street project. Okay. In your analysis, did you, or the framework you're creating, did you consider providing any value to the programs that have like been on the list a long time? Like, right, or on even this new list a long time? Because I can see like you can score a certain thing and you're like, whatever low score is, you're 5 and you're always a 5, and everything else can come in the queue and get prioritized above you because you have a low score. And my concern here is, I'll just briefly, is that it seems as though it becomes a way of saying no without actually saying no, and or clearly saying something will never happen, or having something never happen without it actually saying it will never happen. And so one of the things you can do to sort of counter that is that, like, as something sits on as something sort of ages, you give it like a sort of longevity bonus. Like, you've been on the list 2 years, so we'll give you 2 more points. If you're going to keep the list, was that ever taken into account? Like, would you have some concerns with that as part of the analysis of looking at these projects that have been on the list a long time?
My concern there would be if there were other streets that had higher volume in traffic and safety considerations, just because it had been sitting there long enough or longer, wouldn't tell staff that it's a higher safety concern.
But then at that point, then what's the value of just keeping, wouldn't you just say, we're taking you off the list? You're not on the list.
Conditions could change. I do think that there is a valid input coming from the community saying there's a problem here. So it is important to look at the data to verify compared relative to the other projects on the list. Is there a concern here?
Okay, so in that case, it gives you the option of having something on the list, and if some special circumstances present themselves, then maybe that might be something that could be prioritized. And so that's like the value from your perspective. And don't let me, Phil, if that's not what you're saying, say no. That's exactly not at all what I'm saying.
No, to add to that is this program is dedicated to resident-driven safety concerns, and we're proposing a prioritization a prioritization step to focus our resources to locations that is showing the highest need for safety improvements. But in parallel, we are still advancing, say, our transportation master plan, our Vision Zero action plan. We're also looking into opportunities to improve safety improvements through our resurfacing projects as well as our capital improvement projects. So we are trying to look at safety concern, not just through this program, but citywide.
Okay, two more questions, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. If you get sort of, like direction tonight that's not too like far afield from what was in the deck and what's in the staff report, and so nothing where you're going to have to go and pivot dramatically. What is the soonest one of these projects could be completed? Or when would the first project be completed? So you're going to go to the list, or 30 or something, so I'm assuming it's going to be one of those. When is the earliest? Like, I could go to a resident and say, like, we can expect the first Slow Street project to be completed on this date.
It's not a great answer because it's going to be, it depends. But if there was a project on the list that's part of the resurfacing program in the next fiscal year, then it could be as added as soon as next summer. So
next summer would be,
if it were, yeah.
Summer 2027.
Correct.
If I can add to that, it does depend. We have a few different implementation buckets. The summer, we are heavy in construction, and the most cost-effective way is to fold in improvements as part of our street resurfacing program. Going back to Councilmember Schmidt's cost in terms of $15,000 a speed hump, indeed, that's a high end. That may be if we're doing 1 or 2 speed humps. Now, if we have a multi-million-dollar project and we can fold these improvements in, we can do a lot more that's just cost effective. So Katrine's point is that if we're looking at next summer, we can do more in just a more efficient way. Now, in terms of how soon, if we see as we do the analysis and we do the review and we rank our projects, we have the ability through our on-call contracts to issue work orders and get speed humps installed within a few months. So it depends on the nature of the design, the traffic control device that we would be recommending. If we're talking about speed humps, we have an on-call contract.
Yeah, and I also want to acknowledge there have certainly been projects like Coleman is an example that don't fall under the parameters of this program, but obviously have a lot of the same tenants. Features that are part of what you would consider a slow street program and what are called out in the staff report. So this is my final question. I did want to understand, because we talk a little bit about in the point or the scoring mechanism about equitable investments in resource allocation and specifically like a point for underserved communities. To me, like maybe this is more of an observation than a question. when we talk about equitable, I would have concerns about projects being equitably distributed across the city. To be clear, and so did that ever come up as part of your analysis? Because I would have a concern if, and part of your scoring framework, if the top 5 things in your analysis were in Sharon Heights, or even the top 5 were in the Willows. I would have a concern with the concentration of projects in a certain area of the city, but I don't see any mechanism in your scoring for actually like sort of addressing that, other than an additional point for the communities you would determine to be underserved. And again, underserved can have lots of different definitions to lots of people. Again, that's where we convince ourselves we're creating a data framework, but actually it's the same sort of messy human political policy decisions underneath that data that there always is. And so, but then I would be concerned that whatever you determine as an underserved community, then because of the scoring mechanism gets into lots of additional points, and then you have concentration there. You actually have a lack of equity, as I would see it. And so I know that's a lot of wind up to the question of like, what would be your concern with something that would part of your framework also involving something that looked to ensure that these projects were spread across the city?
Staff could look at that in 2 different ways. One, the resurfacing projects as they're scheduled are equitably distributed throughout the city. So there's a even dispersal there in terms of that bucket. If staff saw a concentration in a particular neighborhood, again, we're going back to the data-driven part, we would identify a problem there, that there is something issue, and that might even need a separate study or a separate look of saying, why is this all showing us in the data that we have a major problem concentrated in this area? So it could spin out as a separate project. In the past, there was a traffic study in the Willows. We've done neighborhood-wide traffic, analyses that looked systemically what's going on in this whole area. Those would be 2 separate ways to address that.
Thank you. Okay. So I had a question about, which has somewhat been addressed, but essentially I see this as a way to get projects moving, and none of it's perfect, but I think that this really does, I am hoping that it will move us forward looking at the traffic volume and safety primarily. I was surprised to hear that it might not happen until 2027.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to clarify. We included in the staff report and in the presentation different ways we can implement these projects. It depends on the analysis and the design. But if we assess a segment where we see speed as an issue and our recommendation are speed humps, we can do that within a few months.
Thank you. So that's, I guess, how much effort and time will be involved in actually doing, when you have a batch of streets, how much time and effort is then involved in that? Is it, well, actually, please.
I wish I knew. Well, it will be highly dependent on how many we receive, how many input we receive from the community, how many requests. 2 months would be a rough estimate if there's not an unexpected amount of resident requests for the analysis piece.
The analysis seems fairly straightforward, though. Am I correct that, I mean, essentially you're taking you're basically just looking at a street that's been brought forward by a resident or group of residents and analyzing that according to the point system, and then for each of those streets. Okay.
The speeds and volumes are, the collision analysis is a little bit more time intensive.
Thank you. Are you thinking of using the, and can't remember the word at this point, but the removable speed bumps that have been requested, or are you basically saying those are not on the table?
I don't know that we would take them off the table. However, I could see that as being a perfect example of a place where we would we would come up with a design, bring it to the Complete Streets Commission, and we could hear from residents whether they did or didn't want to have that type of device as part of the solution. It could speed things up, it could lower costs, but there could also be a significant amount of the community that didn't want it. So,
and I've heard that Atherton is pulling some of them out because of concerns about the noise. Yeah. So what happens if it basically just takes a resident to submit this into the system? And what is the process as far as if it gets submitted into the system, it actually does qualify for some work, and then other residents are like, no, we don't want this. They don't want speed humps, whatever. How does that, have you thought through how that works? Or
so it would come to the Complete Streets Commission, so that would be the venue within residents could provide their feedback. Staff would have to take the feedback into consideration, balanced with the safety concerns observed.
Thank you. Makes sense. And then what is the funding as far as in the report? I wasn't clear as far as it sounds like the administration is definitely there, but how, any way you can set some sort of expectations beyond that?
So the Slow Streets Program capital funding will be one of the funding sources that we'll be using. Again, if the opportunity does arise, we can also use our resurfacing funding. And after evaluation and assessment, if more funding is needs to be allocated, we will return to the City Council during the annual budget for funding appropriation.
And I imagine you cannot at this point say how much funding, how many projects you think you could put forward like over the next year.
It will highly depend on the scope of the design. If it is all speed humps, we can likely do more. But if it's like speed humps and potentially other control devices or traffic calming measures, it will cost more.
Thank you. City Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Nash. And just had actually had a clarifying question. What's a control device?
A traffic control device is a stop sign, anything that we've talked about tonight that is not a speed hump. I could go back to the slide, but the pedestrian refuge island, the rapid rectangular flashing beacons.
Okay, thank you. I know this came up at least from a few residents, and I'm not sure that they went through a process and sent this request into the city just about considering having lighted stop signs near schools or places where folks need to pay a little bit more attention, if that's possible. And then I had a couple other questions that pertain to a few of the public comments. Based on the 30 projects that are in the queue, and if they elevated itself, like what would need to happen for one of those projects to become more important than the other if you have 30?
So there would be an analysis of the speeds and the volumes seen on that street. Like the prioritization table slide that I had up before. And so the one that received the most points for high speeds, high volumes, it's on a road adjacent to a school, that then it would receive the most points and be the top of the list. Then we would be looking at is that road going to be resurfaced? How would we implement that?
And there was a public comment just about the concern about the 15 percentile. And I'm not sure if this came up in some of the complaints that have been brought to the city, just about the speed and not being counted in the data that you have collected. So how can you address that? The things that happen that are not captured in data.
Well, if I can start. So the comment on the 85th percentile that we're using, it's a very common metric for us to use in terms of threshold. It doesn't mean that the higher speeds are not happening. They do happen. We need a way to evaluate what that relative comparison is. The 85th percentile is very standard practice. What we've seen throughout the city is we actually have very few segments where we see much on local roads where speeds are actually much higher than the 25 mile per hour limit. And so what we're seeing in terms of on average on our streets are some streets are seeing, the 85th be higher, but for the most part, most of the speeds on our local roads are meeting our speed limits. Now, there's a correlation in terms of what higher speeds do with the risk of collision and the severity of that collision. And so we talked about, that's why for the 85th percentile, we are applying a point per every mile per hour that the speed data that we're collecting is above that, because we know that speed matters. And so we're weighing that more than the other parameters included as part of the criteria. What we are not seeing, thank goodness, are speeds on our local roads that, we're not seeing many vehicles that are going 60 miles an hour. So indeed, we struggle with, we want to make our local streets, we want 100% compliance. It can be hard to attain that. So we're using a parameter that is pretty well established, and we're actually giving that speed the higher scoring so that it ranks higher.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schmidt, did you want to have some other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nash. And Councilmember Taylor asked a question that I was going to ask around that 15 percentile. But I think I want to build, I've got three things I want to kind of build into. The first is, so I just want to make sure I understand if a street doesn't get any points for speed or collision, I think I read in the staff report, then that it won't be further evaluated or prioritized. But my question is, will it still be worked on, or will the result be that nothing happens on those streets, even if residents make a request? So of the 30 projects, let's say 5 of them don't have any speed or collision ranking. Does the list become 25 and those 5 fall off, even if residents are asking for support?
It would fall off the list for the slow streets program. That's not to say it couldn't get addressed by staff on council direction. It just wouldn't happen through the program as it's written now. So
okay, yeah.
But it's not to say that it would never get looked at if there was consensus from council and direction received to staff that it should get looked at through another program or through another means.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I think that at least clarifies what I was reading. I'm really glad Councilmember Taylor asked the question about the comments from Laura and Katie around the percentiles. So I want to play that back and make sure I heard it the right way. So instead of that 15 percentile being invisible, the faster people go within the 85%, the more points accumulate. So basically, faster equals more points in this methodology. And the reason I'm asking that is even if it starts to creep into that higher percentile, all that would happen would be more points would be assigned, right? So is that, am I interpreting it the right way? Is faster equals more points even within the 85 percentile?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And a point of clarification to make on the 85th percentile, in terms of that 15% not being seen, if there is a 15% of those cars are going at a very high speed, it will move the 85th percentile up.
Got it.
Fifth is looking at all the numbers and finding where 85% of the cars. So if there's a lot going really fast, it does change that number.
Okay, got it. So it's not invisible as much as
Is it? I thought percentiles were more about medians, and so everything got a dot, like, right? And so if more are going up, well, like, I certainly understand that in the case of an average, but explain that to me just a little bit more so that like I understand.
I was not a statistics major. I'm freezing.
Or maybe I can just go find a YouTube video.
No,
maybe.
you are
No, it does
correct.
not.
It's the 85th percentile. Yeah, it's of the batch that we have, how many cars are going above, below. Yes. So we're looking at how many are going above the 25th. And if the 85th speed, percentile speed, most, 80 out of 100, 85 of those vehicles are going at 28 miles per hour, then that gets 3 points because it's 3 miles per hour above the 25th.
But the cars in that remaining 15% don't drag the speed up because you're strictly looking at numbers, so that they really are lost in the equation. And then the 85th percentile gets points for the difference between what is the speed limit and what is the 85th percentile. Is that correct? So that, again, as has been stated, that 15% really is not counted.
Indeed, we're looking at what is the 85th percentile. I would say that if we see behavior, right, we're looking for behavior, and we're using this metric to show us where the behavior is worse so that we can prioritize.
Thank you.
So the final question I have is so I appreciate that clarification on the percentiles. So Mayor Nash had a nice phrase that actually clarified how I wanted to understand this as well. Around, she interpreted it as this is a way to get projects moving. I'm not sure I interpreted it that way. I would hope that's what this is, but I struggle to interpret it that way. So my last comment is, can we look at a world where smaller, this goes to some of the resident comments as well, where smaller scale, quick build projects can get an extra point or two for prioritization to clear out the backlog faster? Because, and I'm curious to frame that within what Director Mitch was saying about the type of solution, because I was a little confused about on page 20 in the flow chart, the implementation prioritization feels like where the speed is really going to throttle up or down on how quickly these things go. So maybe first part of this is, can we really get a little more clarity over time on how implementation will be prioritized? And to the mayor's point about moving a little quicker on easier lifts, can we give those extra prioritization and implementation so that we do clear out the backlog faster? We don't just have a prioritization process that sort of keeps moving at relatively the same pace. Did that make sense? Sorry, I that was clear in my head. I'm not sure if I articulated it clearly.
That is our intention behind the three different buckets. So as on the implementation side, the three buckets I'm referring to are the quick build, the resurfacing CIP projects, and then any larger other CIP projects. And so by being able to distribute projects throughout those buckets, that's the idea of being able to accomplish more quick build projects faster.
But maybe let me reverse the question. So quick build projects don't get immediately prioritized. I looked at the three buckets as a result of the prioritization, and then they went into the three buckets. But
See what you're saying. So,
but can that actually influence? Can the ones that are quick build actually get some bonus points, and then it sort of fills the pipeline quicker? That's how I was trying to ask that question.
the ranking comes first in the sense that we can't design all of the projects. So as we're scoring, we wouldn't know which ones are quick build until we had looked at them to design them.
Okay. Is that wouldn't be intuitive is the wrong word. That wouldn't.
It's not obvious on face value. No.
Okay. I think I'm just trying to get to part of the reason for diving into that one a little bit is it was hard to see how this moves things quicker in the prioritization step. It still would have to go through all the evaluation and deciding what the solution is. And I like that we have the three buckets when we get to implementation, but I don't know if that gets to the mayor's point about like this moving everything quicker. And I think the residents' point as well. They want things that seem to be simple and easy to move quicker. And I guess I'm questioning if this helps things move quicker. Anyway.
And one a point to add is why we are doing evaluation first before design is that it could be likely that the request was for a speed hump, but through our evaluation and design that it could be more. So that's why we would like to first prioritize and rank. And also once we have the ranking as well as our design, we can look at just, for example, there are 5 projects and projects 1, 3, 5, we could potentially push through to quick build. We wouldn't wait for project number 2, which potentially need to be added, say, to a resurfacing project. We would have projects 1, 3, 5 go through quick build and then implement project 2 at a later time when we have the opportunity for resurfacing, just as an example.
I have a question, but I'll let you take a drink of water before you answer. Sorry, I've been there. But wouldn't the criteria that we're using not really take into account what the resident is requesting they think the solution is? Isn't it much more speed and collision? So I think I want to just make sure I heard that right, is if the resident requests a speed bump, like that shouldn't really impact the prioritization because that's going to be in our evaluation versus theirs. Is that the right way to think about it?
I believe I didn't follow the ours and theirs, but yes, the resident request, we will focus on the location and we'll like to understand the nature of what they're experiencing in terms of the safety problem on the street. But we'll look to engineers to determine what is the most appropriate solution for the safety problems observed.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so if the resident requests a speed bump, that doesn't affect the prioritization. It's just a recommendation that's part of the dialogue. Okay, thank you. That's it for my stuff.
Thank you. Councilmember Combs, do you have more comments you'd like to add?
All right, so like I guess building or adding on to my earlier mix of questions and comments. First, I want to say very much thank you for all the hard work that went into this. And I do think it's clear that what has resulted is something that's really responsive to the direction that council gave. I don't know that I was always aligned with that direction, But I certainly think that what you've come back with is, as I'm remembering it, for the most part, aligned with that direction. Just highlighting what some of my concerns would be is that I do think you take out the, I'll say, policy element that is really important, because I think at the end of the day, these, the data can say, in a lot of cases, whatever someone wants the data to say. And the type of data, the way you frame the data, how you collect the data, can all result in different outcomes. And so I think we are not being fully honest with ourselves when we say that, like, this is what resulting is a fully data-driven scientific process, and like we have points. So my preference would be a process that provided some element for some more subjective points of view and options. And I wouldn't, I think what I do find like sort of difficult for me to support is this idea that, council is sort of giving up a lot of its say in these decisions. And what I would have preferred is a scenario where, again, council had some more active role, because ultimately we are responsible and accountable to the residents. And so I don't think we should be looking for opportunities to pass the buck. And I think in a lot of cases, this seems like, mechanism for passing the buck, for residents to be told no and us to be told, well, you didn't get enough points. If we're telling residents no, I think as council, we should own that and accept that it is at heart a policy decision. And again, also because we are talking about a city of 35,000 people. It's a small suburban city. And so decisions like this is what councils do in small suburban cities. Like, right? If we were talking about a 1 million+ city, then yes, I would say, like, yes, maybe this isn't the type of thing you would burden council with. But at this city this size, I think this is very much the type of things that council should do. And so I would have a problem with totally, like I say, passing the buck to some data framework, which I think, again, is not perfect. So that is my feedback. And the only other thing I would also add is that I do think it's important that we acknowledge that projects need to be spread across the city. It was not my decision that we go to districts, but the city made a decision to go to districts, and they are real things. And if I'm in District 2, I can't vote for anyone in District 5. And if I have some issue before the city, I go to the person I represent. And so I think, is again, a scenario where we are not being honest with ourselves when we don't appreciate that there needs to be some equitable distribution of these projects. Because if not, then I think then you're going to have a greater sense of residents feeling that that they're not being represented, or their neighborhoods or their communities are getting a short end of the stick. I think, which leads to a whole set of problems, additional problems. And again, you'll go back to the data, but then, like I say, the data is not perfect and will not save us. And so that would be, like, overall, like, the my general feedback. But again, I know a lot of hard work and very much appreciate it. And again, that's where I stand on what's being presented before us.
I'm wondering, we are trying to provide direction on the program and the proposed implementation process. So is there something that you can, actually, I'm hearing one piece that districts are and just spreading throughout the city is included in the process. Do you have another suggestion that would make this more palatable to you?
Well, it would also be that ultimately, like, council signs off on the prioritization list, and council is the final say. Or that there is like some element by which, or some data point where the council priority gets a point. So how that could be framed could be a bunch of different ways, but that would be my two things. That, like, one, there is some ability for council to have the final say, and that there is some equitable distribution of the projects across the city.
Thank you.
Thank you for making me hone my feedback.
Thank you. Councilmember Schmidt.
Thanks, Mayor Nash. I just want to jump in with a kind of counterpoint. I'm a lot less concerned with policy. I just want to get more done faster. I think we hear this and it's very logical. Streets need to be safer. They need to be faster. I don't think council needs to weigh in. I don't look at this as a passing the buck thing, particularly with quick build projects. I think quick build projects, if there are ways that we can remove ourselves from that process and help things just get done faster, that's part of the frustration I think that residents are clearly trying to make sure we hear. So reinserting ourselves is not passing, or inserting ourselves more, or keeping control. This is not passing the buck, in my opinion. I would like to figure out a balance for things that fall into CIP projects. Clearly, we have a role. For things that fall into larger projects, clearly we need to be able to weigh in. But there's so much to get done in this space that I just want us to be able to, move faster, or make the streets faster. I trust staff to use really good judgments on how to move quicker, and I want to get out of their way so they can do that. So that's my perspective.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Nash. And a part of my direction is focused around what our expected growth is going to be in the city, because we will not stay a town of 35,000 much longer. And the other is addressing historical concerns, which are a combination of the streets not being safe for pedestrians, and then also infrastructure, lighting. Like, some areas it's a combination of issues. That's what I'm saying, the historical concerns. I do agree with making sure that the projects are spread through the city, which is why the historical concerns probably should be looked at, and I'm sure it's already in the 30 items that are on the list. Menlo Park is a city with residents who will voice their concerns until something is done. So unless staff has seen an area that hasn't been addressed and no one has expressed concerns about it. I'm not sure if I agree with Councilmember Combs or with Councilmember Smith as far as how the process should go. I do trust staff. I've seen things with transportation in our city happen without the council giving guidance on that. And I'll say something very, very simple that's inexpensive. The reflectors that are on Willow Road, they just appeared one day, and as someone that drives at 5:30 in the morning, it made a huge difference. So I do trust our staff's leadership in helping to improve the city of Menlo Park. I do think that there needs to be some policy guidance, but I don't think that we need to guide everything. And so yeah, those are my thoughts right now.
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, you just want to be clear, it is, and appreciate, it's not that I don't trust staff. It is that when I ran for council, it was not on a platform of I trust staff. And I don't think anyone ran on a platform of I trust staff. It made on a platform of these are the critical issues, important issues of these cities, and I feel that I have an important voice and perspective to provide, and I'm willing to make the decisions in relation to those issues. And so that's how I see my role. And so to be clear, like, I think that these are decisions that council should own and take responsibility for. It's not about not trusting staff. It's about what I think is staff role and what I think is my role. And if I'm going to sit here for hours and upon hours, then I want to fulfill what I thought that I was obligating myself to, as far as the residents who voted for me. So, and even those who didn't vote for me, the ones that I represent, to be clear. So, and again, that could be just a different opinion, like on what's the policy staff guideline, but what's that you know, the line separating them, but it's not that, again, just want to be clear, not that I don't trust staff, it's just that, like, I trust myself more.
Thank you. So I actually support what is being proposed, as I think that I'm hoping, as others have said, that it really will be a route to get things done more quickly. And I do think that once we get things moving, there is a room for some more quick builds that might not reach that level, but I think we've got a long way to go before we get to that point where we can really feel comfortable that we've got the some of the bigger projects done, or not bigger size-wise, but bigger as far as real safety speed concerns. So I applaud what you've done in coming up with this ranking. I actually think that I am comfortable with the data being pretty solid, because we may not agree with each of the data itself, but it's the same data being used across the various projects so that everybody's going to get the same. That to me takes the subjectivity out of it. So that. Do you have a better choice? I mean, I guess I see this as a way to move, and there may, you know, if we did a lot more searching, we might come up with something better, but this is, the 85th percentile is a recognized standard. The streetlight data is a recognized standard. You're using the collision data from the state. All of those seem like very thoughtful choices that we can use, and that will give an answer that is objective. Actually, thinking that it is an answer that cannot be really manipulated within the that system. So that I'm feeling comfortable with the point system and with what is being proposed. I actually, I do like the idea of looking across districts and just making sure that the city is, the projects are spread throughout. With, as one of you said, if there is a hot point that basically some area looks like it should get more, that you will be looking at that. But generally, I think that it would be a good idea to spread the projects across the city to the extent that it makes sense, but that seems like that's a pretty low bar. And I guess the council's, I do not feel that the council needs to sign off on all of these. I would like to maybe have an information report that comes to us, similar to you're bringing it to the Complete Streets Commission. And if for, you know, at some point, if it seems like council is feeling like we need to weigh in, then we can always address it then. But I'm hoping that this process will actually speed up things, not be waiting for council, as Councilmember Schmidt said, basically keep out of staff's way and get it moving. So, Councilmember Schmidt.
Thanks, Mayor Nash. And I just want to say thank you for the informational report idea. I really appreciate you sometimes get us really focused on constructive solutions to move toward a resolution point. So I also agree. I want to be really clear. I am not abdicating a decision as a council member. My decision in my head is, safer streets faster. And I think the virtue of that is if for some reason we have an issue with the 85th percentile and some streets are getting left out of that, it creates more, if we move faster, it creates more bandwidth to address problems that come up as exceptions from the methodology. So, part of the virtue of moving faster is streets are safer faster, which I don't know that I particularly ran on that promise, but I think it's super important. And so as far as any decisions I feel like I need to make as a council member, it's always going to be in that frame. And to Mayor Nash's point, I want to get out of staff's way and let them get on to the work of making that happen. So I think that we shouldn't get in the way of something that feels like it's solid. And by creating more bandwidth through using it, we can push to get more done. I just want to echo the guidance of moving quick, making sure that we don't have to make every single decision. Staff can make a ton of these decisions, as they often do on many different issues. So thanks.
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, I just like to point out that of the 4 public comments, 3 of them were from people who live in allied arts and talked about the traffic issues or the concerns that they had in allied arts. And so that's 75%, not quite 85 percentile. Where does the value of that play in? That you had residents who saw this on the agenda from a specific neighborhood, and most of them were from that neighborhood. In the point system, that seems to not matter. That is like that 15 percentile. It is really not heard or not evaluated. And I just think that that's wrong. Because I think in our system, the value of people taking time and showing up, and I know not every community is equal, not everyone has time to show up, but I do think it has value and it has importance in every way in our community. It's who shows up to vote, right? And so that's just, again, one of the gaps I will say as we're closing out that I see. I don't see where that gets factored in. But the only people who showed up here were people from allied arts, and to speak very specifically about their concerns. And again, as we all know, I don't represent allied arts. So no, there are projects from District 2 on that list. None of those people showed up. And I'm not saying that doesn't count, but I'm saying that like whatever we do in a participatory system, representative government, that should have some value.
Thank you. And I do represent Allied Arts, and I am very aware of what is happening. One of the things that I am really keyed in on is I just want to see it moving. Right now, we have just been in an impasse for the last 5 years, and I think that I would like to see projects move ahead. I am hoping some of the ones in Allied Arts may qualify. I don't know at this point. But it's just, we need to get the streets safer. We need to do work on traffic volume. I'm sorry, not on traffic volume, on traffic speed, which also is an enforcement issue. And so there's many different ways we can look at this. One request that I would have is that as we go through the list of 30 projects, if some of those do not qualify for, do not get enough points to qualify, if each of the council members could hear about that so that we can actually meet separately with constituents and talk it through, that would be helpful, so that it's just not forgotten. please.
We were recapping on where we have general direction.
And yes, if you could, that would be great. And if you need any more information from us.
So what we heard from you all is there's a strong desire for us to incorporate an equitable distribution of projects amongst the districts, for us to come back with an informational item on our progress. I think generally there's a desire for perhaps assessing more the quick build nature of our designs.
On the informational item on the progress, I think that that's, I saw that as an informational item when you have the list of projects to, yes.
Yes,
projects.
absolutely.
Okay,
And
yes.
we will also follow up on the projects that did not rank or did not meet the criteria.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm sorry, I heard progress versus projects.
Progress.
Thank you, great. Any final comments? Excellent, thank you so much. And I hope Allied Arts ranks in there. Next, we'll move on to regular business. Under regular business, the City Council considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require City Council approval. The first regular business item is H1, authorize initiation of a Proposition 218 notification process in preparation to adopt maximum solid waste rate increases for the next 5 fiscal years at a public hearing May 12th. Here to introduce the item is Public Works Director Azalea Mitch.
Thank you, council members. With me is Garth Schultz from R3 Consulting and also Aaron Romero, our Internal Services Manager. And we've all been working pretty hard on this project. We'll review the background, the rate study objectives and process. We'll walk you through the scenario that we're proposing, as well as our recommendations and the notification process that is involved in Proposition 218 and our next steps. So as we all know, solid waste services consist of the collection of garbage, recycling, and organics. And this is a service that is provided through Recology, through a contract that we have with them. We are one of 11 public agencies of the Joint Powers Authority, Rethink Waste in San Mateo County. And they operate the Shoreway Environmental Center in San Carlos through a contract with South Bay Industries. We also, as part of solid waste, we manage the landfill that's underneath Bedwell Bayfront Park. This is a self-supporting enterprise, which means that everything that is collected needs to sustain the cost of service. Recology conducts the billing and collection on behalf of the city, and we manage the funds that we receive through 2 separate funds, one specifically for the waste collection and the second one for landfill. Single-family homes receive bundle services. This means that they're billed for under one rate that includes garbage, recycling, and organics. And the multifamily and commercial customers pay based on the individual service and the size of their bins or carts. So City Council has set maximum rates for solid waste, and they're charged by Recology, and those funds are then transferred to us. Prior to 2018, rates had not been adjusted since 2012, during that time we experienced quite a few shortfalls, which means that the rate revenues did not meet the cost of service. In 2020, City Council took the action of setting maximum rates for residents and businesses and set the rates through 2025. Through 2028, through today, reverse prior shortfalls were addressed, so meaning that we were able to phase in and collect more than the cost of service to build a reserve. With that, I'll pass it on to Garth for the rate study findings.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Again, Garth Schultz, consultant with our 3 consulting group, and we work exclusively for municipal agencies here in the state of California. We're not with Recology or any private solid waste operators. We work at behalf of you and your ratepayers and their interests. So I've presented to the council in 2017 and then also again in 2020 regarding the set of rate study principles that are the underpinning of your rate structure and your rate adjustment process. So the first portion of that is that the rates should collect revenues to fund your solid waste system, which they do and will do going forward based on the recommendations. Just for context, around half, just slightly under half, 48% of all rate revenues fund the Recology collection operations. So those are the people and trucks driving by every resident and business in the city once or more per week, picking up 3 different types of containers and also providing other services, bulky item pickups and other services. 37% of the costs that are funded by the solid waste rates are for the post-collection activities. So after the trucks pick up the materials, those materials go to the Shoreway Environmental Center and are either transferred to landfills or processed for recycling and marketing of the recyclable materials, or the compost material is transferred to composting facilities. And then a remainder, 15%, are city fees, which fund city solid waste programs. And we'll talk a little bit about those in this presentation. One of the principles in the city's rate study, and should be in all rate studies, is that the rates should address the proportionality and cost of service requirements under Prop 218. What we do in the rates here for the city is adjust the rates based on the cost of providing services to customers, and those are published and posted by Rethink Waste on an annual basis as a part of their evaluation of Recology's compensation and also of their own budget and proposed tipping fees for the materials that are collected at the Shoreway facility. So ultimately, what this rate study and the underlying rates do is ensure that all operational costs and fees and city programs are funded and covered so that it comes from the ratepayers and not from other sources. Another key factor here is to make sure that we're providing for rate stability. We don't want to see wild swings in rates for any individual customer type or customer class. So we're minimizing the impacts that ratepayers see over time, and that's been in place since those rates were adopted back in 2018 that started this process. It is data-driven, again, by that information that's published and posted by Rethink Waste and Recology. And one of the main objectives here is to make sure we avoid future revenue shortfalls that the city would have to fund via other means. So giving you a little bit of a snapshot of what I'll talk about on the next slide, what this chart is showing in blue, those are the revenues at current year 2025 rates, because the council has not yet considered or adopted a rate adjustment for 2026. The 2025 rates that were previously adopted in 2020 remain in effect. And if not adjusted, those will continue to receive or generate around $16.9 million per year in rate revenues. Showing in orange is the projected growth of the solid waste system costs over time, going from 2025 at around 16.3 million, 2026, 16.7 million, and then escalating up to a projected 20.2-ish million in 2030. What's showing in the purple or red at the very bottom of the slide is a representation of what's the annual shortfall that would be the result if the city were not to adjust its solid waste rates. So seeing in 2027, you'd have around 600,000 in a shortfall, jumping to around 1.5 million in 2028, so on and so forth. So what this chart is ultimately showing is that without adjustments to solid waste rates, you will accrue a growing deficit in the amounts of revenues to fund projected expenses in your solid waste programs. So this slide just kind of mentions some of the specifics of what that chart was showing. So again, current year, calendar year solid waste service costs, and these are already adopted and authorized by SBWMA or Rethink Waste, around 16.67 million. Our projections for the next 4 calendar years, and they do adopt theirs on a calendar year basis, and I apologize, you'll hear calendar year and fiscal year in this presentation. The reason is we're recommending fiscal year rates that take effect July 1, but all of the calculations of the solid waste system expenses done at the regional agency are on calendar year. please trust and know that we've evaluated both and we're not unintentionally mixing terms. They're just on different timescales. But over the next 4 calendar years from 27 through 2031, a projected change in costs from around 17.49 million to 20.17 million. Included in these cost projections are street sweeping of the city's streets, as well as some additional maintenance staff and other programmatic time for solid waste collection. The city operates as a part of the solid waste system. I already covered this bullet. The 2027 projected expenses, this is shown on the prior slide, would start to exceed the revenues that are generated by rates, and then that would continue. This second to last bullet, actually, it says cumulative shortfalls would exceed 3.3 million. It's actually the annual shortfall in 2030 would exceed 3.3 million. Cumulatively over the 5-year period, without a rate adjustment, you'd have a shortfall of $7.6 million compared to the system costs. Which would result in a shortfall that would accrue some interest, and it would just magnify the problem in terms of future rate adjustments that the city would need to consider to fund the system. Okay. So ultimately, we are recommending that the City Council consider rates that are based on the authorized compensation to Recology for 2026. That was a 1.8% increase over the 2025 compensation. And then the SBWMA Rethink Waste adopted projections of a 5.1% increase in the cost to process and dispose of solid waste through the Shoreway Environmental Center. For the out years, we've applied a conservative projection of a 5% per year increase in costs for both Recology and Rethink Waste. The 5% for Recology is a cap on their compensation per their agreement with the city, and the 5% increase for Rethink Waste is based on discussions we've had with their finance staff. Over time, they have had some higher increases in that, but that's due to operating changes, the Chinese national sword, a bunch of disruption related to state regulations. We believe that the 5% for the next several years is appropriate. If for some reason there were higher increases in these, there are rate stabilization funds built into this rate projection that would cover those increased costs without needing to come back to the council for so long as they were modest. And we don't believe that that's going to be necessary. With respect to the city's fees, those are fixed and set by the agreement. We don't find a need to adjust or change those at this time. We did do a separate study of the city's fees and the uses thereof, and found that they're justified. The revenues you get are not more than the costs that you incur to provide solid waste services and provide set out for containers in the public right of way. The existing fees, there is a healthy set of reserves presently in your solid waste and landfill closure funds that can continue to fund the expenses for maintenance and other solid waste activities. But going forward, for your next 5-year rate cycle, we do believe that the fees will need to be revisited and adjusted. Not necessary in this 5-year cycle, but the next time you hear a presentation like this, you'll probably hear some recommendations for adjusting those. Okay, this slide demonstrates ultimately where you've been the last 5 years in the paired sets of charts on the left hand of the chart, or the paired sets of bars on the left hand of the chart, and then where we project you'll be going over the course of these coming 5 years. And what you can see overall here is that from 2021 through 2025, the city reversed course. In 2021, revenues were slightly less than the cost of providing service. And then that shifted with recovery coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, with revenues being more than providing the cost of service. The council and ratepayers and those listening at home should know that doesn't mean that there's a windfall to anyone in this. Those any surplus revenues do accrue to the benefit of future ratepayers and can offset future rate adjustments. And then going forward for 2026 through 2030, you can see the projection starts with the blue line being slightly higher than the gold expense line, meaning rate revenues are slightly more than needed to cover the cost of service now, but over the 5 years that stabilizes. And in fact, by the end, we have a small shortfall, but still at the very bottom, you can see the cumulative shortfall or surplus balance maintaining at around $2 million a year, which is appropriate. Now to the main event in terms of what's recommended and included in the notice. So for single-family residents, that would be those in single-family homes or multifamily dwellings up to 4 units. And as Azalea mentioned, those are on bundled rates. So ratepayers in those in that category get charged one rate based on the size of their garbage container. They get recycling and organics cost or rate or services included for free or no additional charge. What we're recommending is a 6% annual increase to those rates effective July 1 each of 2026 and the subsequent 4 years. There are additional charges for additional garbage carts. Those are not recommended to change. Those would remain flat with no additional adjustment needed. Then for the next category, which is for multifamily units and commercial service recipients with for their garbage service, for those receiving 1 cubic yard of material or service or less, their rates are going to adjust from close to 0 to just under 5%. And it's variable depending upon the container size and the frequency of collection. And it's dependent upon the year. But over the 5 years, it'll be within that range depending upon the service level. For those with 2 cubic yards of garbage service or more, the rates would remain flat. And they have remained flat since 2012. So they will not need to be adjusted going forward for this 5-year period. For multifamily and commercial recycling rates, it'll be in the range of 3.86 to just over 5%, again, depending upon the service level size and frequency of collection. And then for organics rates, if it's less than 1 cubic yard, it'll be somewhere between no rate adjustment and 5% per increase. And for 1 cubic yard or more, close to 0 and up to 6%. So all within kind of a modest range, with the key take home that commercial and multifamily solid waste generators with 2 cubic yards or more of garbage will not see an increase. So this is what this looks like for single-family residential rates. Again, these are the monthly bundled service rates being shown in the table. Overall, across all 4 size options over the 5-year period, the monthly rates are going to increase depending upon size between around $3 a month and around $7 a month. And that's the 6% adjustment. So if you can see on the chart down below, I'll take the 32-gallon, which is the most subscribed to service level in the city at 48%, so almost half of ratepayers. Current monthly rate, $58.64, going up by just over $3.50 a month to $62.16. And you can see that for the rest of the service sizes. For commercial and multifamily, there's way too many rate categories and codes and service configurations, so we're just showing a sampling here. This is the once weekly collection for garbage in the kind of left-hand column, recycling in the middle, and organics on the right, showing the current and then the proposed 2026 rate. So current 2025 and proposed 2026 for each of those. You can see recycling is more affordable than garbage and organics. And you can also see, if you look in the garbage column at that 2 cubic yard size and above, those rates would remain fixed without adjustment. There are a couple of other service rate and fee categories that are in the agreement with Recology and that they charge to solid waste generators. One of those is for roll-off or debris box or compactors. They're the very, very large bins that would take up this entire space in front of us. For those services, and it's often used in construction projects or cleanouts, no rate adjustment proposed for July 1, 2026, 1.36% for July 1, 2027, and then 5% annually through 2030 thereafter. And then finally, there is a non-rate, it's a fee for service included in the agreement. They're called intermittent or unscheduled services. But basically, rather than your base monthly subscription, if you want an extra pickup or you have a lock service you desire, you can subscribe to those with Recology. They are elective, they're not mandatory. Those are recommended to go up at a maximum of 6% per year above the current proposed July 1 rates. They're actually set through a CPI calculation that's in the agreement with Recology. And so in all likelihood, it will be less than the 6% maximum that's recommended. And final slide for me. So this is just to give you a snapshot of the ways in which your residential 32-gallon monthly service rate bundle compares to other member agencies in the Rethink Waste service area. So you can see in green right in the middle for the 2025 current rates, and blue just a couple over to the right for the 2026 service rates. We'll note that in comparison to others within the 32 gallons, you look to be in the middle to high side. If you look at this on the 96-gallon basis, you're actually amongst the lowest of all of those in San Mateo County. And the reason being is that you've had many years of implementing rates to be proportionate to the cost of providing service, meaning there's a much narrower gap between your small service level size and the large service level size. And you've done an excellent job at that as a city. Many other communities are still just starting to get that process underway, and they have more variance in their rate types and sizes. And I think that's it for me. I'll pass it back to you.
Our recommendation is for proceeding with the recommended 5-year solid waste rates. And we're seeking direction here on authorizing the initiation of the Prop 218 notification process to adopt these maximum rate increases for the next 5 years at the next public hearing, which is scheduled for May 12th. The Proposition 218 process includes sending the notifications following direction from City Council. The notices have to be mailed and be available 45 days before the public hearing. And these are sent to property owners and also customers. Only one protest will be counted per parcel, and for the rates not to be adopted, there have to be 50% plus one of protests received. So following direction from City Council, we will update the report, the rate study, mail the notices, and return to you all on May 12th, and the rates would become effective on July 1st of this year. And with that, we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think we are going to first reopen general public comment, and then we will proceed with waste studies after that. So City Clerk Karen, could you please call for general public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So we did want to take an opportunity to reopen general public comment. We had a speaker arrive in chambers, so we'll welcome up Tom Ziola.
Thank you, Mayor Nash, council members. And I was really struck by some of the things that Mr. Schmidt had said about get it done quickly. I want to raise with you concern about and report an urgent safety issue to the Menlo Park folks, City Council. There is a dangerous condition for bicyclists on El Camino in the 300 and 400 block of El Camino on the route going north. This is construction that I believe is owned by Stanford University. There's a residential complex and a commercial complex there. It's fairly recent construction. I've been a resident of Menlo Park for a long time. And until a while ago, I was a very avid biker. There is the construction of the driveway, the lanes, the access points between those buildings and El Camino has been done in such a way that there is a very high and sharp ridge on the driveway, the lane that connects to El Camino. And it is unsafe for a bicycle to go onto that driveway from El Camino. I can tell you this from personal experience. I was on El Camino running a small errand in Palo Alto, trying to recycle plastic bags at the Safeway. I live in Menlo Park near Santa Cruz Avenue. The best way from Palo Alto is to go up Alma and onto El Camino. I don't like it. There's a lot of traffic. I was on that road. I was nearly clipped by 2 cars. I was not going that fast, but as you all know, that particular piece of roadway goes down. I'm not quite sure how much. Cars go pretty fast. They were very, very close to me. I tried to go onto the sidewalk on the driveway. That ridge, you cannot see how steep or how tall it is. And as you approach it on a bike, the bike has a natural tendency for the wheels to go straight. I was trying to turn and I fell. I messed up my shoulder. I broke my helmet. I have gashes in my arms and legs. I was stiff for months. I just had my surgery. I was too stiff to have the surgery. Now, this is an unsafe condition for bikes. What Mr. Schmidt had said, get it done quickly. This is easily fixed. You need to grind those edges down on those driveways as they approach that lip onto El Camino. That would prevent this from happening, or at least reduce the chance of it happening. Now, turns out I'm not the only person this has happened to. Today, I went over there with my wife just to take a look at it. And we happened by pure chance to run into someone who lives in that complex. Her husband had a similar problem recently. He lives there. They are both occupational therapists at Stanford Hospital. He was coming back home on El Camino going north, tried to go up the driveway, and he fell and he bruised his knee. He's lucky. I didn't. I smashed myself up. I was taken away in an EMS, and it was at the ER, and I've had months of agony over this. And now I have a 1-year recovery. You guys need to, if you want to move quickly and do something that's helpful for people, I understand all the things you're doing. You have a lot on your agenda. I used to work in city government myself in Boston. I'm telling you, this is an easy thing to fix. Get those folks to grind those surfaces down, and you should be checking that everywhere up and down the streets of Menlo Park. It's a danger. And like I said, I'm not the only person to whom this has happened to. I haven't spoken to another human being about this in the complex. And the only person we ran into was someone whose husband had a similar problem, which I think is incredible.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So please take care of it. The 300, 400 block, it's unsafe. The ridge is sharp, and it should be something that you should address right away. It's not rocket science, and it will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
And maybe in a year from now, I'll be able to join the bike team the bike group over at Stanford again, the professors. Maybe some of you know what I'm talking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we can,
Go ahead,
yeah,
please.
we can close the public comment period and return to our first regular item on solid waste rates.
Thank you. And so, City Clerk Karen, could you please call for public comment on the public waste rates?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on our first regular business item related to solid waste rates, if you're in person, return that speaker card. If you're virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. This will be the final call for public comment on item H1. Okay, seeing no hands or cards. Mayor Nash, we may continue.
Thank
just
you.
a reminder, if we're not engaging our microphones, making sure that they're off. And if you have any mobile devices near the mics, I think that might be causing some of the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would now like to open for City Council questions and discussion. City Councilmember Schmidt, do you have any questions or discussion items?
Sure. I'm happy to start. They're mostly clarifying questions. I'll just kind of rattle them off, three in a row. I would be curious, just to learn a little bit more about the protest process and the 50+1. I caught that at the tail end of the comments, but it would be good to know what that meant, if it's parcels or anything else. The second one is, it would be good to know the Bayfront landfill, the closure maintenance and what's involved and required. It feels like there's quite a big reserve for that, so I'd be interested in getting more information. And then the last one is around if we'd heard any more about the anticipated union wage impacts from ecology and with those have been factored in. Those are my three main ones.
Thank you. Ms. Mitch?
As part of the Proposition 218 process, so for record owners, and that's either the owner of the parcel or the account holder for the service, they have the ability to protest the increase in rates. And for that to be successful, we need 50% plus one protests. We have about 10,000 parcels in the city, and that's the threshold. With respect to the closure of the Bedwell Bayfront parcel, yes, we do have reserves. We just a few years ago completed an improvement project on the leachate system, and we also have a gas collection system and the flare. The flare needs some improvements. We're also concerned about potential challenges with sea level rise. So it is a fund that allows us to continually not only maintain the landfill, but also implement the capital improvement projects.
Thank you.
I can speak to, I don't have any additional information around Recology's collective bargaining agreement or what potential changes may occur to their costs for labor going forward. But I can speak to the terms and conditions in your agreement, which ultimately don't allow for a change in compensation, for a change in cost, for a change in collective bargaining agreement pay or terms and conditions. Anything that would be allowed would have to go through an authorization process run by Rethink Waste, and the city would have to consent to it. So it's not an automatic flow through. If there's a change in cost due to an updated collective bargaining agreement, it does not automatically result in a change in compensation to Recology.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Schmidt, as our Rethink Waste SBWMA representative, do you have any comments on that, or we can move on?
I feel supportive. I mean, I think this is sort of what all of our cities are facing. Being a member of that board, I know that this was discussed earlier in the year, and this process feels aligned with what we're required to do as part of being part of that JPA. So nothing really to add to that.
Thank you. Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nash. A couple of questions. Is this supposed to be like a cost recovery program? Is that generally how these are thought of?
Yes, it's an enterprise fund. So yes, we need to collect what and match the cost of service.
And so is every parcel required to contract for trash collection through Recology or through Rethink Waste, whatever it is, the entity? Am I don't know, right? I'm obviously not tested this, but can I buy a house in Menlo Park and say, no, thanks, I'm going to do my own trash collection?
So yeah, the agreement that the city holds with Recology is an exclusive agreement wherein they have the sole right to do solid waste collection services within the city, with the exception being, other types of hazardous type materials or non-common day-to-day solid waste materials generated from a home or business. Other exceptions would be listed in the agreement, things like donating recyclables to a charitable organization, donating electronic waste through, say, like a school drive or something like that. But Recology does hold that exclusive right to provide the day-to-day solid waste collection services here.
And so, yeah, like if I'm contracting, to train of thoughts. And so does that all also include like the largest employers in the city? So like Meta, like, right, and they're all come under this contract.
Correct.
Right. And so then, though, if I'm a parcel owner, am I required to have a solid waste account with Recology? Or could I say, like, you know, I'm going to do my own, like, so that's not contracting out for solid waste. I'm just going to load it up in my car and take care of it myself. Can I do that?
I don't believe so. We'd have to check. Usually it would be the municipal code that would dictate whether all solid waste generators or parcels are required to subscribe for service. I'm sorry, we didn't look that up in advance, but that is something I believe is the case here.
Yeah, typically, and we will get back to you with the precise authority, but typically, there is a requirement that you obtain solid waste services. You cannot elect to opt out of it.
Okay, and so then, thank you for that. So is there a mechanism by which the city validates that all parcels have an account, a solid waste account? Like, is there a way where we ensure that, like, again, everyone who is required to have an account does actually have an account?
We do have the ability to check.
And we do
for
that?
certain accounts.
Like, is that done on some regular basis?
I would have to find out if we do that audit and check.
Okay. Things, just again, trying to, like, again, understand, like, who's all paying in, what's the mechanism for requiring people to pay in versus what services are provided. Can someone explain to me the reasoning behind combining street sweeping with solid waste? And this it makes a little bit more sense given that everyone has to have an account, because obviously everyone benefits from street sweeping. Whereas in theory, not everyone would necessarily have an account. They do have to have an account, although we don't have an audit to ensure that everyone has an account. But has it historically been the case that street sweeping has been combined with like solid waste?
It's fairly typical throughout the state for it to be classified as a refuse collection activity. There's a few reasons for that. One is that the kind of process and equipment and routes they follow are very similar to solid waste collection routes. It's also a benefit to the solid waste collection service in the sense of if there's something that falls out of the container, falls on top of the truck, blows off the truck, it's collecting those materials that escape from the system. And there's also other provisions, and I forget exactly, and I'm sure City Attorney can probably speak to this, that actually define street sweeping service as a refuse collection activity.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. City Councilmember Taylor? Okay. I do not either. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'm happy to move.
Thank you. I will second. City Clerk Karen, could you please call for a vote?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So we have a motion on the floor by City Councilmember Combs and a second by Mayor Nash to authorize the initiation of a Proposition 218 notification process in preparation for the adoption of maximum solid waste rate increases for the next 5 fiscal years, 2027 to 2031, at a public hearing May 12th. Any further City Council question or discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, City Councilmember Schmidt,
Yes.
City Councilmember Combs,
Yes.
City Councilmember Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Nash.
Yes.
And the motion passes with Vice Mayor Wise absent. Thank you.
Thank you. The final regular business item tonight is H2, authorize initiation of a Proposition 218 notification process in preparation to adopt maximum water rate increases for the next 3 fiscal years at a public hearing May 12th, and consider and adopt a resolution establishing procedures for compliance with Assembly Bill 2257. Here to introduce the item is our Public Works Director, Azalea Mitch.
Thank you so much for your time tonight. So with me is Alberto Morales. He's with Black & Veatch, the agency, the consulting firm that developed the study, and Aaron Romero, our internal services manager. So we'll walk through a very similar process as solid waste. We'll provide you with a background on the water system, the rate study, objectives, and process. We have a few rate scenarios to walk you through, our recommendations, and as well as just a summary of the Proposition 218 process and the recommended next steps. Menlo Park Municipal Water serves approximately half of the city through 4,400 connections. The system is divided into 2 separate systems, the upper and lower zone. There are a total of quite a few miles of distribution mains. We have 2 reservoirs in the upper zone, 1 pump station, and 1 emergency well. It is a self-supporting enterprise, which means that water sale revenues have to pay for both the operating and capital system expenditures. 100% of our supply comes from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, and we have a supply guarantee of 4.4 million gallons per day during the non-drought years. We are a member of the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, BASCA. They represent all the agencies that purchase water from SFPUC. And to let you know, we do have a study coming to you in a few months, and that is the Urban Water Management Plan, where we will look and present the long-term water supply needs and availability of the city. Our water rates have been adopted through periodic rate studies. The rate itself includes a fixed meter charge, consumption charge, so that's based on the water that one consumes, the capital facility surcharge, which pays for some of the capital work and maintenance, a drought surcharge if a drought is declared, and then separately capacity charges, which are one-time fees that are charged when there's an upgrade in service or a new connection. The rate study principles, we worked with Black & Veatch to develop the strategy to fund the ongoing operations and our capital expenditures. The rate study focused on the industry standards, which is that the rate revenue cannot exceed the funds required, and then those funds have to be used for the service that's being provided. Our team recommended a rate structure and the rates themselves, and also updated the capacity charges. In terms of projections, our operation and maintenance expenses are projected to increase over the next few years. Our largest cost is what we pay to purchase the water from SFPUC. We're also including, as part of the operating costs, 2 operator and training positions. We've had quite a few challenges with certified staff on our water team, and OIT positions are for individuals who are interested in becoming certified. And it's sort of like an apprentice program, and it enables us to be able to have staff that are learning the skill. And if we have a job opening, once they complete their OIT years, they can then potentially get a water operator job with the city. So we are proposing to add two OIT positions as part of this rate study. We also included projections for recycled water. The West Bay Sanitary District is in the process of building a facility. They will be ready in 2027, which means as recycled water is introduced, the demand for potable water will decrease, which will affect our operation costs. As part of the capital expenses, back in 2018, we developed the Water System Master Plan, which identified over $90 million in needs through the next 20 years of capital improvements. So with the largest component on the operating side being the SFPUC costs, the rate study does assume an ongoing increase in SFPUC rates. These match what we have seen in the past. Now, if these projections are lower than what SFPUC charges, there is a pass-through that automatically would get added to the water bills for customers. In terms of the water sales, as you can see, we've seen a downward trend. Part of that is because I think people are being much more efficient on their water use. We've also hit some, we will be hitting a loss in sales as a result of the recycled water. So we will continue to see a downward trend. In terms of capital cost over the next 5 years, we have a large project planned. This is building a reservoir on the low pressure zone. Our system is divided into, we have storage capacity in the upper zone, but not in the lower zone. And so one of the recommendations of our water system master plan is to build that storage capacity in the lower zone. And as you can see here, that is our largest capital project. With our consultant, we evaluated quite a few different scenarios as it relates to capital improvements. We have been delayed on some of the implementation. So we took an approach of proposing improvement projects, including the storage project, which is the conservative approach, as well as with an aggressive approach that would mean that we would do more water main projects over the next 5 years. We also evaluated not only the conservative and aggressive CIP, but also the debt that we might need. We've been operating on a pay-as-you-go approach, which means we've been building the reserves, the capital reserves to build our projects, and we just don't have the capital reserves to build a large $30 million project. So our consultant did evaluate 2 different long-term debt scenarios. Under the conservative approach, we would be borrowing $60 million. Under the more aggressive approach, that would increase to $24 million. And under all these scenarios, you can see that the money coming in would increase significantly based on the different options. So the more aggressive approach with no debt would require us to increase the revenue by 35% by next year. In terms of what that means to what one sees in their water bill, the options have varying rate increases per year. Option 1 has the lowest impact proposed. A home consuming 10 CCF would see an increase the first year of 15%, followed by lower increases the following. The reason for the higher adjustment in the first year is because we've actually there was a year where we had 0% increase. As we changed to a tiered approach, which meant that we charge a lower cost for lower volume consumed and then higher rates for the higher tiers, higher consumption, there were savings at the lower end, which brought in less revenue. So we were proposing a uniform rate that would charge the same amount for every gallon, every CCF consumed. In terms of what our water department has seen in past increases, you can see that back 20 years ago, we had much more significant rate increases. We had a spike in 2016, 27, and then a decrease in 2021 where we didn't increase rates. And we're proposing to have a jump this year, and then they would level off. So if we take a look at this 20-year span, we would actually be increasing rates at a lower amount that we have had in the past, which is good news. It means we've been catching up, although we have a large CIP project ahead of us. And then in terms of the operating fund, what this graph shows is a pretty reasonable approach in terms of obtaining debt and also using some of the reserves so that we get to our target. And so we're not accumulating more than we need, but we have the right debt coverage ratio for whatever funding mechanism we choose to proceed with. where our rates are currently at the average. You can see Menlo Park hitting the 123 this is for a single family home. So we are at that average value. This graph shows the current rates. Now, with the proposed increase, we would be at the higher. However, this graph does not provide the rates that would be implemented as part of 2027. So we may very well fall still within the average. So our recommendation for tonight is for your consideration of 3-year rather than 5-year rates. The presentation right before us for solid waste, we see an opportunity here for stability on the solid waste front. On the water side, we have a few pending changes. The introduction of recycled water, we made assumptions. We want to make sure that those assumptions are correct. And we also would like to understand more on the capital needs, specifically with the storage. That's why we're recommending 3-year rather than 5-year rates. So we would come back to council with better projections for the out years. And we're recommending option 1, which includes debt financing and offers the lowest rate increase. We would also, with your direction, evaluate the type of financing that would be most cost effective to the city. That could include revenue bonds, general obligation bonds, and loans. Most agencies have a combination of financing between revenue bonds and loans. So we seek your direction in authorizing the initiation of the Proposition 218 notification process to adopt the proposed maximum rate increases for the next 3 fiscal years at the public hearing, which is to be held on May 12th. We're also considering the adoption of a resolution establishing procedures for compliance with Assembly Bill 2257. This applies to water specifically, and it sets an additional process where customers and property owners can submit an objection. It's different from a protest, but it's an objection, and we as staff have to address the objection and present that to City Council at the public hearing. So after this, with your direction, we would mail the notices. As I shared before, only 1 protest and objection would be counted per parcel. We serve about a little bit over 4,000 parcels. Protests must be mailed or hand delivered. The objections do have a timeline. They must be submitted by April 30th, and rates cannot be increased if more than 50% plus 1 of the property owners or customers submit written protests. And if SFPUC does propose additional rate increases, that those costs would get passed on to the customer. So on your direction, we would mail the notices, set that deadline for the objections, and returned to you all on May 12th. And the rates would be, if they become effective, they would be introduced on July 1st. With that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this time, let's go to public comment. City Clerk Karen, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on item H2 related to water rate increase, if you are in person, return that speaker card. Virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. This will be the final call for public comment on regular business item H2. No hands or cards. Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. I would now like to open for City Council questions and discussion. Councilmember Combs, do you have any? No.
For the project on the lower portion of the district, has a location been picked yet? Where is that project at?
We evaluated a number of locations, one being Parkline and the other one the seminary.
The Seminary Park?
The seminary, the Catholic seminary, the location,
okay.
Yeah, not the park.
Okay.
As a location has not been selected, but those are the two that have been evaluated.
Yeah, okay. One of them likely will be selected as.
Yes.
Councilmember Schmidt, do you have any questions or discussion comments?
Yeah, discussion point. Thank you, Mayor Nash. If you don't know the answer to this question, it's okay, but I am curious from a ballpark point of view, the total debt service that the city currently has. I know the bar chart showed a small portion of red, but I'm curious if when we add it all up and the total debt service of the city is that a significant amount? Is there a range that we know that number? I'm mostly curious relative to our debt levels.
The water enterprise is an enterprise. There's currently no debt for the water department. So we've paid for our capital improvements as we have saved, pay as you go. So this would be the first time we would be incurring debt.
My fault, Ed, to clarify, I meant for the city as a whole. So I saw on the chart that we didn't have it for the water service, but is the city carrying significant debt?
We have Measure T bonds.
Through the mayor, we can follow up with you, but as the Public Works Director just said, there's general obligation bonds for Measure T for Parks and Recreation issued originally like in 2002, refinanced at what point in time, and then reissued. The last tranche was released a few years ago with a large portion of it going to the new pool at BHCC. So we can get back to you on the dollar amount there, and then it's not truly the city, but there's the paying off the bonds related to the redevelopment agency that I think we touched on recently. And so I think there's 5 years left on that, but as part of an upcoming overall financial picture, we can provide the specific information.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe the comment is I appreciate the willingness to go for option one. Just this, I have to just say, it was very interesting to see these two items back to back in the agenda because it just caused me to sort of have a window into SFPUC, Rethink Waste. We all know what's happening with PG&E. Just the total cost of living in Menlo Park and the Bay Area is so amazingly unaffordable. And, housing, of course, is one of the biggest drivers, and we need more affordable housing, but it's other things in the basket like these things that just are shocking when you add them all up. So I for one appreciate that if we have the option to carry a little debt and it's not too much debt for the city, if it takes just a tiny bit of pressure off residents who are seeing these eye-popping increases. Yeah, I would kind of lean more toward us doing whatever we can to take some of that burden off of our residents. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Taylor? No. So I think, does everybody agree that there's the 3-year rather than the 5-year rates make sense? And thank you. And option one, it sounds like we were excellent. And then you need us to authorize the initiation of the notification. So would someone like to make a motion and a second?
I'll move.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. City Clerk Karen, could you please call for the vote?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nash. So we have a motion on the floor by City Councilmember Combs and a second by City Councilmember Schmidt to authorize the initiation of a Proposition 218 notification process in preparation for the adoption of maximum water rate increases for the next 3 fiscal years, which is 2027 to 2029, at a public hearing May 12th, and adopt a resolution establishing procedures for compliance with Assembly Bill 22 5-7. Any further city council question or discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, City Councilmember Schmidt,
Yes.
City Councilmember Combs,
Yes.
City Councilmember Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Nash,
Yes.
and the motion passes with Vice Mayor Wise absent. Thank you.
And thank you so much to staff who've put both these business items together, which was a lot of work. Informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the City Council in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the City Council. Informational items are not action items. However, a City Council member, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. City Clerk Karen, do we have any public comments on the informational items?
Thank you, Mayor Nash. So for any member of the public who wishes to provide comment on our informational items, I-1, City Council agenda topics, I-2, the City Council 2025 through 26 work plan update. If you are in person, return a speaker card. If you're virtual, engage that hand feature. Calling in, please press *9 now. Okay, this will be the final call for public comment on our informational items I-1 and I-2. No hands or cards. Mayor Nash, you may continue.
Thank you. Would any council member like to discuss anything, any of the informational items? All right. We will move on to the city manager report with City Manager Justin Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Would like to announce or advertise two things. One is the Menlo Park Spring 2025 Activity Guide. Enrollment opens for residents on March 14th and will open to all on March 18th for many types of classes like fitness, dance, sports, youth gymnastics, music, drama, art, and lifelong learning. You can learn more at menlopark.gov/activity guide. And the second thing is a reminder that the City Council will hold its annual priority workshop on Saturday, March 21st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. here at the City Council chambers. Community members are invited to attend. City Council will evaluate community feedback, select top priorities for the next fiscal year, and receive presentations on special topics like the city's financial outlook, environmental justice element implementation. You can learn more at menlopark.gov/priorities. So those are two updates for this evening.
Thank you. City Council member reports. Are there any reports from City Council members since the February 24th City Council meeting? All right, I've got a couple reports. First of all, PCE met on February 26th, and there is now a budget billing available for Peninsula Clean Energy bills. It smooths the bill across 12 months. And if you were signed up already with PG&E, it will automatically apply to the Peninsula Clean Energy side. We also just got word that, this is sort of outside the meeting, but from Peninsula Clean Energy, that the Menlo Park Library solar PV system has now reached a commercial operation date as of March 1st, 2026. So the system is now fully operational, generating renewable electricity for the city of Menlo Park, and the projected energy cost savings over the 20-year term is over $600,000 for the city. Also on January 27th, Councilmember Schmidt and I attended the Council of Cities meeting in San Carlos, and I attended the city selection committee and voted to reappoint the only candidate, City of Redwood City's Councilmember Diane Howard, to the HART board. And we had a nice dinner with a discussion about childcare. And then on Thursday, March 5th, I attended a meeting that was held by the county to introduce Sheriff Binder, and Chief Norris was invited and was there. And just to note that we had a very large turnout of residents, primarily from District 5, who were greatly concerned about home burglaries, and there will be some follow-up on that. And with that, we will adjourn at 8:53. Thank you.